Have you ever walked into a room and sensed the weight of dread in the air? You put one foot in front of the other in curiosity, despite having a gut feeling that you should probably turn back and flee. Your heart pounds the walls of your chest like a prisoner's fist on the chilly, damp dungeon. Your blood runs cold at the sight of those creatures, with their grotesque features twisting in visible delight as they discuss ways of savoring you. "Kill him," says one. "Can I hack off his finger? Can I pull out his hair? Ooh, let's have a bite at his thigh just there. Should he be soaked in a marinade? Should he grill on a spit or be roasted with stuffing?" You take a moment to think about the events leading up to this. You crashed a wedding to seduce the bride, and when that didn't work, the only option was obviously to kidnap her. On the way, you bumped into 3 milkmaids, and you got so drunk with them that the next day you were nursing a massive hangover. When you hit your head on a rock, you became unconscious, and you saw this woman in green who claimed that she's the daughter of the Mountain King. She suggested you come up with her to His Majesty's humble abode, this very place to which you've only agreed to for the free food. You were given this life-changing offer to become a troll. You were posed to the philosophical question, what's the distinction between troll and man? His Majesty then accused you of impregnating his daughter, and just as you denied it, you came to the grand realization that you are actually guilty for knocking her up. With your mind? It sounds like a nightmare, to be honest. In fact, it was believed to be a literal nightmare that Peer Gynt, our morally questionable protagonist, had had. This play was written by the famed Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen, based on the Norwegian fairy tale Peer Gynt. It was published in 1867 and it premiered 9 years later in Christiania, which is Oslo to you and me, with incidental music written by the one and only Edvard Grieg, who is also Norwegian, by the way. Now that you've had a brief and rather charming introduction to the main character of the play, it's time to introduce the composer of this music. Albert Einstein, Grieg, who also undeniably exudes this main character energy. Born in 1843 into a musical family, he was the second youngest of 5 children, and he was taught how to play the piano by his dear mother from the age of 6. Grieg was a rather mischievous boy who grew up with an immense disapproval of the regimented nature of educational institutions, including the Leipzig Conservatory in Germany. Grieg felt out of place among his peers and did not feel at home at all. He wrote in 1881 that "I left Leipzig Conservatory just as stupid as I entered it." Nevertheless, he put himself to work and explored chromaticism and a plethora of combinations of instruments and sounds, interwoven with Norwegian folk elements and striking rhythms. The realm of harmony has always been my dream world, and my relationship to this harmonious way of feeling and the Norwegian folk songs has been a mystery, even for me. I have understood that the secret depth one finds in our folk songs is basically owing to the richness of their untold harmonic possibilities. Grieg is to Norway what Sibelius is to Finland. His explorations of the folk elements brought Norwegian folk music to worldwide recognition, and in turn developed a national identity, so much so that Grieg himself said, "I'm sure my music has the taste of codfish in it." Grieg composed music to Ibsen's play Peer Gynt, and then 12 years later compiled it into 2 musical suites with 4 movements each. So let's have a look at suite number 1 and how Grieg creates these entirely different worlds by using mere 4-bar melodies and ingenious usage of repetition and variation. The first suite opens serenely with morning mood. Dawn breaks and golden rays of sun stretch across the horizon, replacing the sleepy shades of dawn with its radiance. A peaceful melody from the flute paints the calm, pastel hues of the early hours of the day over chords sustained by the clarinets in A and bassoons. As you might have already noticed, this melody is 4 bars long only. The phrase gently swells in the 3rd bar and concludes the bar after that. This same melody is then passed over to and imitated by multiple instruments, each time being slightly different from the last. Here it is on the oboe. Or here's just a fragment of it exchanged between the flute and oboe. and this time it's played accented by string instruments. The main melody climbs upwards towards a fortissimo climax. And then a solo horn plays the main melody, very prominent as it's marked in the score, and the high strings accompany with pizzicatos interwoven by dreamy arpeggios from the flutes and clarinets. Flights of birds ride the morning breeze, fluttering their wings before another day of adventures. Next comes the death of Ars. Peer Gynt has just made it back from his crazy adventures just in time to visit his mother, Ars, on her deathbed. This movement is relatively short, only 45 bars long, and it consists of two 4-bar melodies, which repeat themselves throughout the piece. Simple as it sounds, it is a deeply expressive and emotional piece of music. All the string instruments play muted, except for the double bass, and this produces a muffled, but at the same time intimate sound, almost as if Peer was murmuring in disbelief to himself, reflecting on his actions and his role as a son. It is marked andante doloroso, andante meaning moderately slow and doloroso meaning sorrowful. The main theme is, as I've said, 4 bars long. It begins in piano, while the second phrase answers in pianissimo. You could hear this as Peer talking to his mother, and his mother replying in all the weak energy that she has left. The intensity builds at louder dynamics, with voices of instruments doubling in octaves. Each note is now articulated with separate bowings, as notes are no longer slurred. Texture thickens and accents emphasize each and every syllable that Peer has cried out to Ars. Peer's grief reaches its highest point. And then suddenly, it all quiets down. 3 chromatic notes repeat, as if looking back at the past, lamenting it all. The chromatic melody creeps lower, lower, and lower, getting quieter, quieter, and quieter. The last bar of the phrase repeats. Perhaps it is Ars's last word to Peer. And again, Ars draws her last words out. The music dies away, quite literally with morendo, which means dying away, written in the final bar as Ars breathes her last breath. One may wonder how Grieg managed to make it interesting with so little melodic material and so many repeats, but it is precisely through those repeats that Grieg is able to gradually build up the emotional tension and intensity in the first part, in contrast to the raw and intimate second part, to evoke these heart-wrenching emotions for the listeners. Next comes Anitra's dance. We have now arrived in the Moroccan desert, with Peer Gynt dressed in his stolen Bedouin clothing. Oh, and by the way, he somehow has become a prophet of status. Warmly invited into the tent of an Arab sheikh, he rests upon cushions, drinks coffee, and smokes a long pipe while awaiting entertainment. I don't know about you, but it sounds like he's having his best life. The leader of the group finds his daughter Anitra and a group of girls who then dance, sing, and seduce Peer. The piece begins with a bright major chord, perhaps revealing Peer's delight and anticipation towards this. Hold on. We're in a Moroccan desert, but Anitra's dance is a Polish mazurka. Pizzicatos can be heard among the strings, with the first violins playing a seductive and playful chromatic melody, with the twinkling sound of the triangle adding to the dazzle of it all. Meanwhile, Peer sits comfortably in the chieftain's tent, having the best time of his life as the beautiful Anitra seduces him, flirtatiously lays at his feet, and asks him for the ring on his finger. He is absolutely captivated, completely entranced, to the point where he finds it impossible to not return her flirtatious hints. He even tries to kiss her, and that is when it all goes wrong. Peer is outsmarted by Anitra, and she ends up stealing all his money. Yes, the very same Anitra who was just seducing him. Brutal. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it turns out this dance was all simply to distract him, and that is not so romantic after all. The piece ends with a minor chord, as Peer leaves the tent empty and deflated, his wallet and his spirit. And this movement goes without introduction. It's one of those very recognizable melodies that you're sure you've heard somewhere. Though this music has remained popular for a century, Grieg didn't think much of it himself. As he said, "For the Hall of the Mountain King, I have written something that so reeks of cowpats, ultra-Norwegianism, and to thyself be enoughness, that I can't bear to hear it, though I hope that the irony will make itself felt." But regardless of the genre, the original menacing atmosphere prevails and puts the listener on edge with an inexplicable fear for whatever danger that looms. So let's have a look at how Grieg achieved all of this with, surprise, surprise, a 4-bar melody. The theme is played on bassoons and lower strings, and it's first heard soft and slow. The troll's heavy footsteps are heard from a distance. Higher strings join in. The Mountain King poses the philosophical question, what is the distinction between troll and man? More instruments join the party as other instruments take turns playing on offbeats. Over the course of the debate with the Mountain King, Peer is found guilty of impregnating the king's daughter with his mind. Being the morally correct person that Peer has always been, he freaks out at the Mountain King's offer for him to marry his daughter, and he strongly refuses to do so. This very much angers the trolls, and when Peer starts to run for his dear life, they chase after him. Groups of chromatic quintuplets can be heard from the strings on alternating beats. The trolls are closing in. Before the year's out, Peer, you'll be a daddy. Basically, all instruments are playing at this point. It's unbearably loud, with the first violins screaming the theme at the top of their register. Smash him to bits on the mountain wall, bite his bum, rend him, the trolls shout. And even higher, poor old Peer is scrambling for his life, and here's where it goes even crazier with a massive acceleration to the end. It's looking very bleak for Peer. The trolls are now within arm's reach, and the putrid smell of their breath is getting stronger every second. He can almost smell what they've had for lunch. These ear-splitting, dissonant chords and chromatic small notes sound just like fingernails on a chalkboard, which now repeats in quick succession and closes the movement. Phew, that was close, wasn't it? Peer Gynt just barely escaped from the clawing fingers of the trolls. Brownie points if you can tell me in the comments how many times that theme was repeated throughout the final movement. If you want more videos like this, then let me introduce you to 14 masterpieces of music. I've made a short course called 14 Pieces, where each piece of music was chosen not only because it's a great piece, but because it will also teach you how to listen to music. So you will discover some amazing music, but you'll also develop your ears and get a stronger understanding of how to appreciate and enjoy classical music in general. You can check it out in the link in the description. Thank you for watching.